opposition parties battle over a special budget that could put billions of dollars toward Taiwan's defense. Illegal oyster farms near the outlying Jinmen Islands raise national security fears, but some say it's a chance to work with China. Gearing up for a crucial date, dozens of lawmaker recall campaigns look set to go to a public vote. Plus, Taiwan's literature, culture, and food take center stage at this year's Seoul International Book Fair. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Leading off with our top story today, a key national security funding package has become the latest flashpoint between Taiwan's ruling and opposition parties, with billions of dollars on the line. The funds are meant to pay for drones and Coast Guard ships, but as Chris Gordon reports, the opposition is accusing the cabinet of pulling a fast one.
$5 billion in national security funds are at stake as the ruling Democratic Progressive Party asks the opposition Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party to approve the money. The $5 billion is part of a special budget act put forward by the cabinet rather than a normal budget bill. It was submitted in April amid concerns about how U.S. tariffs might affect Taiwan's economy and society, although those tariffs are now in a 90-day pause. The package in full totals over $13 billion, covering not just national security, but also labor and health insurance and support for industry and employment. But the two biggest and most controversial parts are the $5 billion allocated for defense and the more than $3 billion in subsidies for Taiwan's struggling power utility. Now, the ruling party says that the national security funds will pay for new air and sea drones, more patrol ships for the Coast Guard, a thermal and infrared camera system along the coastline to catch smaller boats, and cybersecurity upgrades. The DPP says this money is necessary given the increased aggression and gray zone tactics used by China against Taiwan, particularly at sea.
去年当海巡跟中国的渔民发生擦撞，不是很多人 包含在野党立委都在检讨说，海军你为什么没有给每个弟兄配备密录器？为什么没有给他们更好的装备？这都不是想要，而是必要。所以也要拜托国人朋友们一起来支持行政院的规划。
The opposition has criticized this $5 billion, saying it should go through the normal defense budget process, rather than being part of this special budget which they say was meant to deal with U.S. tariffs. They also say the money lacks transparency, with the cabinet giving no line-by-line list of how it will be spent. The opposition has proposed instead to use that money to give direct cash payments to every citizen, essentially stimulus money. Now, there's about a month left of negotiation time before the special budget moves on to its next phase. But unless a deal is reached, the opposition, which has a majority in the legislature, is likely to pass their version of the package. Chris Ma and Chris Gorin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's defense ministry says it has tracked 25 Chinese military aircraft and 7 Navy vessels around the country in a 24-hour period. 19 of the aircraft breached Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This area is not part of Taiwan's sovereign airspace, but the military uses it for defensive purposes. The increased activity comes amid heightened Chinese military activity in recent weeks, including 2 aircraft carriers operating in the Western Pacific. Officials say they are monitoring the situation. On Taiwan's sensitive sea border with China, illegal oyster farming is a thriving business, with Chinese workers even crossing over secretly to take part. Some officials worry national security could be at stake, but local authorities say they're ready to work with China to dismantle illicit oyster beds. John Van Trieste has more.
Coast Guard inspectors board a suspicious vessel in sensitive waters off the Jinmen Islands. What they find concerns them, and some officials. Here, right off the Chinese coast, where Taiwan and China-controlled waters meet, the Coast Guard says illegal oyster farming has become a problem. And now it says it's even caught illegally hired Chinese workers who've crossed to the Taiwanese side to work them. This is an area where Chinese ships often come, sometimes to challenge Taiwan's ability to police the area. And so the discovery of Chinese nationals coming across undetected raises national security concerns for some.
金马棚分署已经查获金门养殖业者非法雇用中国 人士从事养科作业，总计8船18人，其中6船14人已经经司法机关判决有期徒刑或罚金在案。
But for others, especially local Jinmen officials, the nationality of the workers isn't the main concern. Some even see a rare opportunity to work with China.
虽然国安危机影响不至于那么大，但是对环境的影响是很大的，所以这个两边的执法单位都应该依法来执法。
But regardless of whether possible threats to sovereignty or those to the environment matter more, this is an issue the government's been meaning to tackle for a while. The cabinet's already met twice on the matter. And in November, the Ocean Affairs Council started cross-department talks on getting rid of illegal oyster beds. The conclusion for now is that this will be a job for Jinmen County and the Fisheries Agency, with backup from the Coast Guard.
现在有请海巡单位加强查缉让他们现在也严防大陆渔船在进入我们槟榔屿水域这一带有争议的水域进行养殖作业。
Still, so close to China's coastline, this is a patch of sea that's hard to police. And oysters are just the latest challenge to keeping order in contested waters. Kama Xu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is gearing up for the next stage of its mass lawmaker recall movement.
所以呢，6月20号是很关键的一个日子，中协会应该会宣布。那宣布以后呢，我们6月20号就举办。
Election authorities are reviewing more than 30 petitions to recall opposition Kuomintang lawmakers. Most are expected to pass on to a public vote. The KMT has responded with an anti-recall campaign. The Democratic Progressive Party says it will step up support for civic groups campaigning against KMT lawmakers.
民进党全国霸区的所有党公职将会大串联，同步宣传罢免、投同意、走上街头来宣讲的一个行动。
Recall votes are expected to be held in late July or early August. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te has expressed thanks to G7 world leaders for advocating peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. The G7 summit wrapped up in Canada on Tuesday with world leaders releasing a statement expressing concerns over China's destabilizing activities in the East and South China Seas. They also reiterated the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Lai wrote on X that Taiwan will continue to work with global leaders to counter coercion and deepen economic ties. U.S. President Donald Trump says he has not made a final decision on whether to strike Iran.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other.
Trump's latest comments come 2 days after he posted a warning on social media calling on Iranians to evacuate Tehran. Many of the Iranian capital's 10 million residents have since evacuated. Meanwhile, Israel and Iran have continued to launch missiles at each other, with the Israeli Air Force confirming on Thursday morning a new wave of airstrikes. A decade ago, Apple launched a multi-billion-dollar push into China, building factories, training engineers, and laying the foundation for its global supply chain. But a new book by Financial Times reporter Patrick McGee called Apple in China finds that those efforts did more than just boost Apple's bottom line. They helped power China's rise as a global tech leader. TaiwanPlus reporter Adil Brar spoke to McGee to explore how deeply Apple and China are now intertwined.
In your book, you compared Apple's investment in China with the U.S. Marshall Plan. Can you walk us through what that entails and what it means for China's rise in the tech industry?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the programs are similar per se. It's more that Apple, when it was feeling on the back foot in 2015, its relationship with Beijing having deteriorated, it does its own supply chain study internally to try to figure out how much it is investing in the country so that they can basically tout to Beijing and local officials across China, look how much we're doing for the country. So on their own basis, they figure out that they are investing $55 billion a year. That was such an extraordinary figure that I struggled to find any corporate equivalent. So for instance, if you tally up all Canadian and American private investment into Mexico from the signing of NAFTA in 1993 to 2020, you only get to, I think, around 230 billion, Whereas in May 2016, Tim Cook and his top deputies pledged to invest in China $275 billion over the following 5 years. So in my struggle to find any corporate equivalents, I went to government efforts. And the two things that I really hone in on was Joe Biden's CHIPS Act, which was the flagship plan in America to bring back chip fabrication. That was $52 billion for 4 years. So if you like, Apple was investing a CHIPS Act per year in China. Pretty significant when you think about the Commerce Secretary of America calling that flagship program a once-in-a-generation investment.
And given Taiwan's central role in Apple's supply chain, especially through TSMC, how does Apple navigate its reliance on both China for assembly and Taiwan for semiconductors? And how is that going to really play out since we have cross-strait tensions at the moment?
Well, they're different, aren't they? I mean, Taiwan is a great ally of America, and it doesn't present the same geopolitical risk per se, except for the fact that Xi Jinping seeks to annex Taiwan and has said things like, this is not a problem we will leave to the next generation. So in that sense, it is the same problem in that Apple has enormous exposure to a single country, China, for really all of its manufacturing, and then all of its CPUs really come from TSMC. And so there's a certain sense in which that is the same geopolitical dilemma. One thing I would point out is that Warren Buffett was really bullish on TSMC a few years ago, still says very nice things about the management, but basically divested all of his stock, around $5 billion. And he said, I love the company, I don't like its location. What I find interesting about that is he is also the largest single supporter, the largest single investor of Apple. And yet over the last 18 months or so, he has divested 2/3 of his investment in Apple. He has not said why, but I think the same logic applies. So I find that very intriguing.
And why did China let Apple develop such a huge footprint inside the country? And what was China's interest in this?
I don't think it's any different why they allowed Terry Guo of Foxconn to set up operations in the country. I mean, China was a pretty poor country following the Cultural Revolution, following the years of Mao, and Deng Xiaoping sets up this whole opening up and reform era wherein areas like Shenzhen, but most of the rest of the country later on, become like zones open to capitalist experimentation, tax-free zones that are open for export. And there's a certain sense in which they lure in foreign capital with the explicit goal of learning the expertise so that local Chinese firms and local Chinese people can learn the skills and then thrive on their own. I want to be clear, there's nothing nefarious about that. That's actually pretty brilliant. And it works pretty well for entrepreneurs like Terry Guo or Barry Lam of Quanta. And you could say that's going to work out fine because there's certain reasons why Beijing would never go after Apple, and we can discuss that. But that's quite a gamble when you're talking about an authoritarian regime. Xi Jinping is, I think by his own standard, a dictator for life. I think that's a precarious position for the world's most valuable company to have put itself in.
That was author of Apple in China, Patrick McGee. You can watch the full interview with him on Zoom and Zoom Out, available on YouTube and TaiwanPlus.com. Coming up after the break, becoming a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner could soon get easier in Taiwan, but many pharmacists worry that could put patients at risk.
也是我们很坚持的说，不管要怎么样中药发展，重点还是要经过药师国考，确认他的专业能力。
Summer is here and the heat is on. Get outside, get moving, get in on the action Taiwan style. From epic trails to wild rivers and sun-soaked waves, adventure is everywhere. When the day cools down, the competition lights up. Fast plays, big moments, and non-stop excitement. All the action, all in one place. Game On Taiwan, where the action lives.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Pharmacists are angry at a rule change they say could put patients taking traditional medicines at risk. As soon as late July, it will be easier to get a license to sell herbal and other traditional drugs. But pharmacists say the new system is far from rigorous and risks letting unqualified people into the profession. John Van Trieste has more.
敲太阳，下
These pharmacists are deeply unhappy with health officials and even calling on some by name to resign. They worry if the government doesn't change course, people could be harmed. At issue are traditional medicines. These often herb-based treatments are popular in Taiwan and regulated. The government wants to boost the dwindling number of traditional medicine shops by making it easier to get into the business, with less stringent licensing from as soon as next month. But traditional druggists must be licensed pharmacists, nothing less. Otherwise, unqualified people could make dangerous mistakes. Today, these pharmacists have tried persuading officials in charge of government ethics that making it easier to get into traditional medicine violates laws on medications and pharmacists. It's the 7th time they've tried to stop the change. And they hope this time will be different, as they still don't see officials taking them seriously.
药师工会也一直希望可以跟他协商，但看起来卫福部高高在上，从来没有要跟药师工会协商。 所以今天我们才到监察院来做陈情，希望监察院监察委员可以主持正义。
These pharmacists say that traditional drugs are still drugs, and that only those with the proper certification should be handling and selling them.
这部分也是我们很坚持的说，不管要怎么样中药发展，重点还是要经过药师国考，确认他的专业能力。
But there is another side to this debate, one that sees what many in Taiwan would call an essential service disappearing, partly driven out by the rise of rival traditional medical clinics that take public health insurance. Projections show the number of traditional drugstores expected to crater from a little over 7,000 now to a little over 3,000 in the coming decade. Some in the field even see less stringent requirements as a positive.
我们认为此举不仅有助于扩大专业人力资源。 以及补足产业人力缺口，亦可提升从业人员整体的素质及服务的能量。
Taiwan is a place where many view ancient treatments as equally valid as those that go through clinical trials and come from modern labs. People will keep buying and taking traditional remedies, and so this argument over who is qualified to prescribe and sell them is one with serious implications. And the Pharmacists Union says it won't back down for the protection of consumers. Meaning this is an argument that could burn on for some time. Luffy Li and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Japan's former First Lady Abe Akie is in Taiwan partnering with a Japanese nonprofit for a special educational experience. As Irene Lin reports, they aim to facilitate cultural exchanges for children of all ages and nationalities.
Former Japanese First Lady Abe Akie is here in Taipei promoting a cross-cultural educational event based in Japan's Nagano City, her late husband Abe Shinzo's hometown. The host today is nonprofit one-day school in Nagano. They work to allow children from around the world to experience a day at a Japanese school, allowing for cross-cultural exchanges. Abe says she hopes kids from Taiwan can experience the beauty of the city close to her heart.
This is the place where my husband's grave is located, and it is also the origin of the Abe family. That's why I sincerely hope that many people from Taiwan will come visit. I would also like the children of Taiwan to learn about the beauty of Nagato and the good qualities of Japan.
The courses include attending classes, eating a school lunch, experiencing local music and dance, all in hopes of encouraging kids to build up the courage to be themselves. As a Taiwanese person based in Japan, the school's founder, Cecilia Wanatabe Azuka, says she and the former First Lady are both passionate about sharing Taiwanese and Japanese culture.
那安布夫人就是从一开始，我们也是因为她邀请我去她家做台湾料理。 做挂包，然后做我们的佛跳墙，然后做了很多的这个菜，然后他非常喜欢。那我们这样子的往来也非常的这个密切。
Since Abe Akie lost her late husband, she has been working as an independent advocate for cultural exchanges between Taiwan and Japan. And Taiwan President Lai Ching-te personally greeted her at his inauguration ceremony last year and at a security forum in February. And now, Abe Akie is back in Taipei to support cross-cultural education experiences. The one-day school program is set to start on August 1st with 3-day-long sessions. At least 200 children from around the world, including Taiwan, will take part, learning more about each other and the neighbors they share the planet with. Klein Wang and Irene Lin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A man has been fined more than $500 for vandalizing a 2-century-old temple, causing more than $300,000 in damage.
是我是很痛的，真的很痛。判下来就这样子哦，没有办法，没办法修复，因为之前的用漆跟现在用漆是不一样的。
CCTV footage from 2023 shows the Spanish national scrubbing the temple's door with oil solvents, causing the paint to dissolve and peel off. The temple is now filing a civil lawsuit to help cover the costs of repairs. Taiwan is the guest of honor at Korea's largest book fair, which kicked off yesterday in Seoul. Within its pavilion, Taiwan is showcasing its literature, culture, and history, hoping to help more people get to know Taiwan. Cadence Quaranta was there.
Sounds of Taiwanese daigi inside a packed convention center in Seoul. This Taiwanese band helping to kick off Taiwan's pavilion at Korea's largest book fair. Taiwan is the book fair's guest of honor, meaning it's been given a large space right at the entrance to showcase its literature and culture. One of its central goals, to allow more people to get to know Taiwan.
文学、漫画跟绘本，其实最能够呈现台湾的文化的一面。那我觉得所以这也是对我个人来讲是一次文学的造山运动，也是一次让全世界看到台湾的一次机会。因为一部纪录片讲说看不见的国家，那事实上我们透过文化交流，透过各种运动，像半导体等等，我们其实被全世界都看到。那这一次，我们再一次让全世界看到台湾。
Inside, over 500 Taiwanese books, some translated into Korean, organized into 6 distinct areas, each exploring a different aspect of Taiwan. Its food, its lifestyle, and in this area, its history. This timeline introducing Taiwan's past, which organizers say is similar in some ways to Korea's. Japanese colonial rule over both countries ended 80 years ago, following Japan's defeat in World War II.
那最后呢，回头看这80年，就台湾跟韩国的发展真的是那个亦步亦趋啊。希望这个区域能够让韩国观众来看，能感受到一种共感，历史的共感。
The space also introduces one of Taiwan's largest religious pilgrimages in honor of the sea goddess Mazu, as well as its indigenous and queer literature, with an interactive incentive to visit the entire area.
Each visitor to the Taiwan Pavilion gets this passport. And once they visit one of the 6 areas, they can stamp their passport. And once they get 6 stamps, they might be able to win a prize.
Its overall theme, Taiwan sensibility, derived from a hashtag used by some Korean people on social media when posting photos of Taiwan, reportedly meant to convey the sense of nostalgia or warmth they feel when visiting the country. This wall displaying photos posted with that hashtag.
他们喜欢这种台湾的生活方式，其实我们觉得很平常的，比如说我们常看到台湾以前很喜欢做铁窗啦，或者是我们在这种公寓前面有一排的这个摩托车啦，或是一些花盆等等，这个都是我们觉得非常稀松平常的一些情境，但对他们来讲，就是他们喜欢的一种台湾非常感性的东西。
The pavilion is also hosting cultural events, giving out Taiwanese snacks, and holding talks with Taiwanese authors, 23 of which came with the pavilion's organizers to Seoul to share their work, including this artist, known for his online comics.
我觉得这是一个很棒的机会，就是推广自己的作品给韩国的读者。当然，因为我的作品还没有翻译成韩文，我觉得可能效果有限啊。当然，它还是一个很好的机会，让韩国读者可以直接看到漫画家的图像作品。
Many publishing companies from Taiwan are also here, hoping to introduce their work to their Korean counterparts. This publisher hoping to advertise this comic book, among others.
那他现在到现在已经卖了7国的版权，所以我们在亚洲这边还韩国想要主力推就是这本盐铁花，这样希望可以踏足韩国的市场。
It's a chance, organizers say, for Taiwan's publishing industry to broaden its collaboration with publishers in Korea, and for Korean people to learn more about Taiwan as a whole. The pavilion packed with Korean visitors, each with different takeaways and reasons for being here.
I'm interested in queer-friendly culture, and as one of my friends told so, I already have a kind of a badge related to Taiwanese queer pride or something, and it is really interesting that there's a lot of rainbow flags, around here. So it feels like, okay, this is the world where the queer pride would exist with proud, not like Korea.
I'm a big fan of Chun Soo-ho, and I'm very excited to meet him because I really want to talk and hear about the books and his life. Yeah.
Her favorite book, one that describes life in Taiwan.
It is the life in Taiwan, so it is very similar with Korea, so I was very touched.
So for 5 days at the Seoul International Book Fair, Taiwan's literature, culture, and history is in the spotlight, with the hope of deepening interest and understanding of Taiwan's story and to spread its art and words far beyond its borders. Scott Huang and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we head to Denmark for this annual Kite Festival. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.